go.
Welcome racing fans to Get Tied On, brought to you by Wizard Race and Sports. I'm Tom Amello. He's Michael Kipnis, the Wizard. We are filming from Union Avenue, across the street from Saratoga Racecourse, as we've done all summer long. And it's Labor Day weekend, Labor Day Saturday, final weekend of the meet. And Michael, you know, if I was a filmmaker and I was going to make a film about this Saratoga meeting, I would title the film Monsoon Summer. Subtitle, Water Always Wins.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty good, you know, or you know, Young Frankenstein, something. I don't know, you know, something to that effect.
All the anticipation of the meet was crushed with the weather patterns and the impact of the weather on the fields, taking the races off the turfs. I'm sure NYRA has come close to, if not actually broken a record for the number of races taken off the turf, and I'm sure it's had a significant impact on handle.
It has broken the record. It's up in the high 60s, I think, and I think all the rain that occurred this meet had a real contributed possibly to some of the fatalities.
Sure.
I don't know about the dirt, you know, possibly the dirt, but definitely the turf course, because we had more fatalities on the turf than I can remember.
Yeah. Well, again, water always wins. Racing over wet turf here in America is different than when they're racing in Europe because their meets are so short.
Yeah, that's right. And I also think that having so many turf races taken off had a real effect on Chad Brown, you know, not winning the trainer's title comfortably. He's in a dogfight. We're filming this before the Saturday's races, and he's 2 in front of Linda Rice. And I don't think it would have been close if you just take,
sure,
you know, 60-something turf races takes away Chad Brown's best game, to say the least.
Hello. Yeah, because you know, he can run 3 or 4 in a race.
Yeah, right. Like we've seen 4-horse fields, and all 4 are trained by him. But I also think that the biggest factor is with these off the turf races, so many, and combined with vet scratches, we had a plethora of small fields.
Right. And
small fields, you know, to the point of 5 or less many times, which made a lot of these races really unplayable. And, you know, when the handle figures for the meet come out, I really wonder where it's going to compare to previous years when they did run, you know, many more turf races.
You know, in talking about them as unplayable, short fields really force you to look at the horizontal plays. And I think there are a lot of folks, recreational players, of course, who really don't look that much at those horizontal plays, and they're really left with few options. Either you have to, you know, hone your game to look at how to leverage short favorites and short fields horizontally to make good wagers, or you just got to sit on your hands. And the recreational player who doesn't ply the game year in, year out, wants to put money in the window, and it hurts.
Yeah, the problem with the, you know, playing like the pick 4s and pick 5s in those off the turf races is that it doesn't really give you a lot of options as far as making a score.
Of course.
Because what you have is a series of just small fields, and you have, you know, there've been pick 4s and pick 5s where one of the legs has been won by a horse that we just couldn't figure.
Oh no, you couldn't find him.
Couldn't. Yeah. So another thing that I noticed this meet, which was really apparent not just to me but to friends of mine who are big players and chart, you know, and we look at exacta payoffs and what we think they might pay. We don't really see the drops after the wire with the computer bettors, but we saw a lot of exacta numbers that were that paid a lot less than we thought that they should. And they did in New York stop the win betting pools early to prevent them, the computer bettors, to bet into the win pools. But they attacked the exactas and the horizontal wagers as well. So when you're betting those horizontal wagers like the pick fours and pick fives, it's buyer beware as far as price goes.
Of course.
Because you just don't know what it's going to pay. So a lot of those plays that you want to make in pick fives or pick fours, you better not hook up a couple favorites. If you got to structure it where you got some competitive races in there.
And that's the point I'm trying to raise here. It's learning how, because you're almost forced into it, how to better construct those tickets if you're going to go into those pools. That's all. So you mentioned, we mentioned the trainer race. What about the jockey race? I mean, it isn't a race.
Well, it isn't. Irad has won it like Secretariat won the Belmont. I mean, by a country mile. Yeah. He's up over 50 something, and some riders that I think it's unfortunate Saez went down when he did, because he was riding in great form and he would have really won a lot more races if he had stayed sound and didn't injure himself. But I have to make mention that two riders that have, Jose Ortiz is Jose Ortiz, but two riders that really have impressed me and didn't surprise me, but impressed me, was Gaffleone and Manny Franco.
Manny Franco had a great meet.
I have to say that those two riders were just outstanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's going to complete this And Away We Go segment. We'll be right back with Down the Stretch. You're watching...
No, the betting segment.
Oh, the betting segment.
Visit wizardracingsports.com and purchase now. Since 1986, the Wizard has been your source for the best handicapping products for the always challenging Saratoga meet. Wizard selections include analysis and wagering strategies for every race. Wagers are updated after late scratches. The Wizard wagers every day, backing up his opinions with his own money. Visit wizardracingsports.com and purchase now.
Welcome back. Get tied on. We're at the quarter pole here on finishing weekend at Saratoga Race Course, and it's time for the betting segment. And Michael brought the ledger.
Right here.
The ledger.
Here is the book.
The book
I've been speaking about. I actually brought it on the set.
That's right. And most of you, if you got to look at these pages, your eyes would bulge out of your head. But that's a whole nother story. So explain the book.
Well, here's the book, and as you can see, there's more blue than there. All right, let's see if I can show you this.
Just hold it up to the camera.
Here's just one day, like 1 week, okay? Here it is.
So what are the colors? It's color-coded.
Okay,
and I know you're a color guy.
Yeah, well, the red is just so I know the date.
Okay.
And I have the date, the meet, tops for the day, wagering, right? So that's all the red is, so I don't have to keep looking because it's too much blue.
Now the wagering is the sum amount, the gross wager for the day, correct?
Right.
You don't break it down by exactas and this.
No.
So
I'll give an example of what I do. So I record my top winners and best bets for the meet. Okay, so I finished yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay, so through yesterday, I recorded 131 top winners out of 369 races for 36%.
Not bad.
And if I run the total dollar on it, so I'm not just, there's a lot more than just picking the top winners because you're looking to hook up the exactas and whatever.
Well, that's what
but
the betting
I have to have, the betting is separate than the picking. But I have to have some gauge to how I did picking top horses.
Well, if you don't have top horses, it's hard to get the winners.
Right, exactly. It's hard to cash.
It's hard to cash.
So I add up I base it on a $2 flat bet. Yeah. So 369 races, I have accumulated $747.80, which means that if you bet $2 on every horse, you would be up $10. Now, it sounds like, well, big deal, $10.
No, you beat the take,
You
too.
beat the take. If you bet every favorite this meet
Yeah.
that accounted for probably less than 36% now, 34, 35,
Yeah.
you would get killed. So that is really good because you beat the take, you beat the tops. The best bets, I'm winning 35% for also a mirror image, $10 flat bet profit.
Good.
Okay. Best meet, I think it's
Yeah, you've done well.
Right. The thing is, it doesn't equate to you.
Well, we've
winning.
had the conversation before, and that having him and then hooking him up properly is what gets your bankroll floating.
Right. And numbers don't lie, and I'm not going to lie to the public. Okay, going into this week, I was down $8,000. Now, my handle is a third this meet because of the wet weather. So I've bet a total of $53,000, which is a third of what I normally bet, okay? I get a rebate, which if you're not playing with a rebate,
Don't bet 50,000.
I even say don't bet 100 because the couple dollars you get gets you a hot dog, okay?
Go ahead.
But anyway, going into this week, or the last 6 days, I was down almost $9,000 for the meet. Reason, I didn't hit where, yes, I don't bet these horses just to win, but I didn't hit a lot of pick fives, pick fours. I got skunked in a lot of those wagers. But I've made this huge comeback. I've won like 6,000 in the last three racing days. So I have 3 days, it's Saturday morning, to see if I can even beat the meet betting. Which, look, I bet $53,000 to be down, 5 or 6%, and I've had a shitty betting meet. Okay, great picking meet, lousy betting meet, because like we said, it doesn't matter. You got to hook them up.
Right.
And I'm aggressive, as you know, and
Really?
I'm wheeling and dealing. And if I've been skunked out of so many 4s and 5s this meet, and trifectas where, I get
With
too
Jimmy
smart.
Ferraro wins.
Yeah, right, yeah, I'm all over
I
that.
love Jimmy Ferraro, don't get me wrong. But you never know when he's going to win.
Yeah, and Diodoro finally got off
Right.
the Schneid here.
Atris?
Atris is still Atris. He hasn't I don't think Atris. There
He
was
had
one other
win.
guy.
He had one win.
One win.
Yeah.
Another guy had a win, but I forget his name. But it's one of those frustrating meets betting wise.
Okay.
How about you? How was your
How
betting
about
going?
me? Well, I'm down,
Okay.
okay, but I have 3 days to catch up.
Okay.
And I didn't put 50,000 through the windows.
Well, we're getting out today, buddy.
All right, we're getting out.
We're getting out today. I got one.
Okay. Well, we've been at the quarter pole. Call us if you're interested in putting 50,000 through the windows. Wiz would like to talk to you. We'll be back with Down the Stretch. This is Get Tied On.
You want a Triple Crown?
Well, this is the Down the Stretch segment of our program, and this is going to be a little different. I decided after doing all these interviews, and we have several good ones in the can. We've got the 2-hour Richard Migliori special. We got West Point. We got Eddie Barker. We got Tony the Pony, Clickety Click on one segment. There's some tremendous stuff coming up. But I said to Tom, let's end this seasonal show interviewing each other.
Here you go.
Not that we're very interesting, but I think we got something to say, and it's my pleasure to want to interview, my dearest friend for nearly 40 years, and that's Tom. So I'm ready to interview you.
Well, I'm ready. I'm ready for your shots.
Right. So you grew up in New York, in Queens, right?
Yep. Bayside, Queens.
Bayside, Queens. I lived in Bayside, Queens,
Yep.
later on. And as a kid, was it your uncle that introduced you to racing?
My uncle and my father, I always refer to them as two New York punters who never met a favorite that they liked. My uncle was a New York City cop. Uncle Iggy, Ignatius, my Uncle Ig. And Ignatius was a New York City cop who, fortunately or unfortunately, his beat was Aqueduct Race Track. So he knew all the jockeys, the trainers, and
how
I don't
much
know
of his salary did he lose?
No. These were measured men. Both were very measured men. They liked the puzzle. They were both what I would call results charts, horse for the course guys. My uncle told me once, he says, they all got to eat. Everybody's got to eat, so every trainer's going to get a win. And you just got to know when. And the other thing they both said is that the trainer's job is to find the horse's best class, surface, distance, track, and get that horse to that spot as often as possible. So they were paying attention to form cycle and trainer cycle long before people were talking about that. My uncle, I was a student at Siena College. My uncle called me up one day. He says, I want you to bet a horse. The horse's name is Ike's Pet, but you only bet him on the inner turf at 1.16 miles. Okay, I didn't even know what that meant. So I waited. He ran on the melon at 1 mile. He ran 1 1/8 miles. At the end of the meet, had him at 1.16 miles, won for fun, and paid about $28.
Right.
So they were primarily looking for spots where a horse almost always looked due. And they knew it was due because they kept paper results charts. Now in the 80s, I took their paper results charts and turned it into a database so that I had all they had, only I could spit out lists. That was my undoing.
But did you actually go to the track like when you were like a teenager or like even earlier than that?
Yeah, well, not so. In high school, I went to the track. You know, as a high school freshman, I went to the track with them. I remember sitting on the roof at Belmont. I don't know who was running. And the real highlight, one day they took me out of school. You know, I went to Holy Cross High School, and they had a horse that was shipping to Laurel. So I went with them to chase a horse, of course lost. And then the end of the tale is that about 3 or 4 weeks later, my uncle calls my father, and he says, the horse won, right? My father was out working, didn't know the horse was running, this, that, and the other thing. My uncle said the horse won. And so my father says, I'm listening to my father's side of the phone call. And he says, did you bet a couple of bucks for me? And my father, this is what I'm hearing. What do you mean you didn't think I'd want you to bet? I drive to friggin' Laurel with you to bet this horse. You couldn't bet $2 for him. Well, that was almost the breakup of these two guys. And so, you know, we chased that horse. And, you know, then I went away to college. And actually, the real irony, I was a Pinkerton here at the track in 1967. In 1967, I graduated college, and I was a bartender at the Hall of Springs from 4 to 11. And I was a night relief guy at the track from 11 to 8. So all night long, I was figuring horses. I had 5 stops. I only had to be awake in one position. I actually drove the fire truck. You know what the fire truck was in 1967? It was a pickup truck with a fire extinguisher. And I was told, if you see a fire, don't try to put it out, call somebody. So my job was to ride around the track, and I had to get a minimum of 25 miles on the truck. That's a lot of miles around this track in an 8-hour tour. So I'm doing this for 2 nights. Like the supervisor says to me, he says, what are you doing? He says, I'm driving a truck. He says, you ever hear of exit 13 and 14? He says, go on out there, go up there a couple of times, take a nap. Oh, okay. You know, I was just trying to do my job. It was great. What a laugh.
So, you know, we tell the story about us meeting because at that point you had been involved in racing and doing your stuff. Yeah. And you know, we developed a relationship from that first meeting.
The simple thing is, you know, I'm my father's son in terms of learning style. My father always taught me, you want to learn something, first go to the library, get some books, and then find some experts and find out what they do. So I read everything, you know, when I decided I wanted to learn about the game, I read everything that I could find. You know, I'd read what Russ Harris would say. I'd spend time at the Teletheater here in Albany, and they had the Wizard sheet. So every once in a while, I'd go for the $2, whatever it was, or 2.5. I think it was 2. And I'd buy the Wizard sheet, and I'd read what you wrote, and because it was interesting. And, you know, you did stuff that nobody else did. Most people just put names and numbers, and you sort of tried to explain the logic behind the pick, and I found that informative, and it was to my learning style. Well, then you did a seminar. You and Noreen, your wife, came up and you did a seminar at the Teletheater. They used to do those things with people. And you came. So I went to the seminar and it was good. You did a great job. Shortly after that, somebody says to me, you got this database of stuff, why don't you just sell that information at Saratoga? So with a really good friend who was in the publishing business, we created this thing called Track Facts, which in the beginning I sold only information on horses who had back Saratoga form because there was no career box.
Right.
So I had a card I sold for $1 in 1980, 88, 89, and I only had 6 races on the card where horses had back form. I didn't have any maidens at the jump races. I had 4 out of 6. Quick call ran.
Right, I was just thinking of quick call.
Yeah, and so I had information that nobody else had unless they dug it out of the dirt. And I thought that was worth selling. So what ultimately happened, the guy buys my card, he comes back and says, where's the other 3 races? He thought I was handicapping. I said, no, I'm doing this. I want them all. And so we were committed to the meet. So I morphed that sheet, Track Facts, and it was facts, just the facts, Joe Friday, no opinions.
Right.
I morphed that sheet into both the factual information on one side and my silly picks on the other side, because that's what people wanted. You always told me, people want winners. They don't want to do the work. They just want the winners.
Right.
Or they want you to either confirm their thoughts or they want to blame you.
Right. and you've had a very successful sheet that is sold, on the track, at the track, Saratoga, for many, many years.
Yeah, long time.
And you do. I mean, you work. I know how hard you work, and
you're kind.
You've had a lot of success, and it's you've stood the test of time.
Yeah.
And, and that's
the wind hasn't blown us over yet.
Yeah, and that's a tribute to your ability, and just you were on Capital OTB for a lot of years, and you've had a really big following. You and Nick Kling were a mainstay on that show for
20 years.
20 years, and so you're pretty much, I would say, a fixture, so to speak, in this
Sure, I'm like a
environment.
chandelier at the track.
Right.
An old chandelier at the track. Well, listen, you remember when I started here, this was 24 days of carnival. And there were all sorts of hucksters and salesmen outside. Everybody was selling everything outside. And so, really I became part of the carnival. I was selling sheets. You never did it. You distributed. I was selling sheets on the street, which is how we met. Because I remembered you, of course, from the seminar, and you'd walk by me every day, and one day I stopped you, and you were very kind and generous, and we engaged. You said, let's have a talk, and we went, and it was a great meeting, and we've been friends ever since.
And that's really nearly 40 years.
Yeah,
40 years.
And the comedy of that is here's a guy who supports his family, handicapping and selling sheets, and I'm a jamoke who's got a real job and a real life, and I'm standing outside of Saratoga pretending I'm competition, and he could have looked at me and said, no, you're an idiot, or you're my competition. I don't want to talk to you. But you were very generous, Michael, and it's why we've been friends for a long time. We've talked. You said once before on the show that you've known a lot of people and you've mentored a lot of people. I consider you a mentor, because we knock things off each other's head. I learned from you, and I know there's certain ways I look at things and you go, oh.
Yeah, and like I look at these young handicappers, that have some visibility in the game, and it's not that I'm hard on them, when I'm critical at times, but
Sure.
I want to help them. Like, I'm in the twilight of my career. I want them to be successful. I know when they're not doing their work. It's like you were a teacher for many years. Yeah. You know when somebody fluffed a paper. Okay, you
can't send it in.
Right, and I, you know how hard I work.
Yep.
And you know how much I care about the work, and I do it with integrity. Well, you may just give a name, a program number, a little comment, but behind that work is a lot of work.
A lot of work.
And when somebody who's a public handicapper is not doing their job, I can spot it correctly because we know we've been in. If I'm critical, it's to help them, not criticize them, and put them down.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we used to call the teaching learning moment. But the problem with the teaching learning moment is that you got to have hopefully folks who are somewhat teachable and open to the discussion or the question, and I don't know. I know the work that I do and how I approach a card, and I know the tools that I use and try to process. And I've watched you work. We've talked about the work. We are very different. We process things differently. You're much more intuitive than I am, and you're not a numbers guy. I pretty much grew up with numbers. I'm not saying I'm a slave to any one thing, because you can't in this game. In the long run, the most important thing you talk about to folks, it's a question of feel. If it feels right, okay. If it doesn't feel right, you got to deal with those feelings.
Right.
And you're picking or you're betting or whatever it is.
I want to ask you, the last question is we both grew up in the game in the 70s and 80s. I go back to the late 60s. But, how is the game back then changed to the game today, and how do you feel about it?
Well, see, I don't go back to the 60s. I'm going to say I started living in smoke-filled OTBs back in the 80s, late 80s, where I had to go home, stop in the garage, take my clothes off before my wife would let me in the house, because those were smoke-filled. Wait a minute, and they didn't. OTB didn't have numbers. It was we were betting with the letters. They had no. It was only the live call, the call, not the video, right?
Packet the track.
Packet the track. The whole 9 yards. So in those days, you still wanted to go to the track, but if you couldn't get to the track, you had a club that you could kind of go to and hang to, and there were all sorts of characters. I mean, I'm going to call my youthful days in this game are filled with a group of guys who were funny. Everybody had their own thing. The guys would come over from the pizza guys would come over after making the dough to make it the early double. They got their aprons on and full of flour. Yeah. There was Jimmy, who was a cook in the East Greenbush Diner. Great guy. Boy, he loved Pete Ferriola. He's a Greek guy. He was Ferriola, just got to bet Ferriola. And there were, Ferriola. You had Ferriola, you had Gaspy, you had Oscar. You had Murray Garron, right? Murray Garron, you folks don't know. Murray Garron was a trainer who wouldn't pay to have a horse ponied, right? Would never have a pony, and would run his horse every 3 days, if he could.
Right.
So he ran him every 2 weeks.
Right.
He had 2 horses, Jacksonport, remember?
Oh,
and
sure.
Federal Funds.
Yep.
He either ran them both together, one after the other, and they just ran, if they were feeling good, they could win, earn a purse. If not, another time.
Yeah.
That was the game. And it was exciting. And I'm not excited by the game anymore. But we're sitting here today, and there's 2 stakes races on this Saturday card. One with 4 and one with 6, I think. 6-horse field. How do you get excited about that?
Yeah.
So and the medication, that was the beginning of the LASIK era, right? No more 4-wheel drive. No more innovation.
No
right?
more Uncle Oscars.
No more Uncle Oscars. Different guys.
Different guys.
And the one thing that I think is consistent, and it's the same. I don't care if it's a stock market. I don't care what it is. With money involved, there are going to be cheaters or guys trying to push the envelope and grab an edge. Those are the rules of humanity, okay? And it's somebody else's job to raise those people's level of concern, catch them, and protect the rest of us. You've heard me say this before. I think the past performance should be as sacrosanct as a stock prospectus. You can't put anything in a prospectus that's fraudulent. and you can't leave anything out.
Right.
Okay, so I buy a past performance for $8. Oh, $8. And the horse has been gelded, but I don't know it.
Right.
Till 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay? It's not on the overnight. And so how does that protect the bettor? So, Michael, you know me, I'm always the guy who was comfortable sitting in the back of the room, raising their hand and asking a question because the answers that we were getting were not clear. And I think this is an industry that owes the public clear answers to questions.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate this interview, but I also would be remiss to say that your lovely wife, Renee, has been also a dear friend of mine, and I've seen you two together for the 40 years I've known you, and I think that you wouldn't be the person you are and where you're at in your life without her. So I just want to pay a little bit of homage to her because she certainly deserves that.
I appreciate that, and you're absolutely right. I mean, this game is relentless. Relentless, you know that, because it's 24/7. Even though it's a 5-day week, it's still 24/7 in terms of there's racing somewhere, and if you want to do well, you got to pay attention. During these 24, 30, 36, now 40 days, it's relentless, and my wife Renee has been supportive, and sometimes it's tough because I'm tough, and. There's a lot to get done.
You're not that tough. You're a pussycat.
Please, folks, forgive him. He knows not what he said. So get us out of this.
Yeah, and we'll be back, and you'll be interviewing me.
Yeah, that's right.
Visit wizardracingsports.com and purchase now. Since 1986, the Wizard has been your source for the best handicapping products for the always challenging Saratoga meet. Wizard selections include analysis and wagering strategies for every race. Wagers are updated after late scratches. The Wizard wagers every day, backing up his opinions with his own money. Visit wizardracingsports.com and purchase now.
Welcome back to Get Tied On. We're in the down the stretch portion, and it's my turn to ask Michael some questions. And the first question I have, and folks, over the course of his life in racing, you've seen him on my show and other shows. People have been given glimpses of the Wizard, of Michael Kipnis. So we're going to try and fill. And you've talked about several portions of your life here over the course of these Get Tied On shows. So my question for you, Michael. What were your formative years like that predated you becoming or deciding to become the Wizard?
Well, like I once said, if my father took me to the movies as much as he took me to the races, I'd be an actor instead of a handicapper.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, as long as I can remember, my father and mother really didn't have much of a relationship. They had led their separate ways. So, like an excursion.
What was your dad's business?
He was in the clothing business. He was a great salesman in the garment industry. That's where my grandfather worked and then went on later to own restaurants and produce shows. But my father was in the garment industry, and he carried himself with class and well-dressed, great personality. Had his friends that were all curmudgeons. They were all Damon Runyon characters. And, I had a brother.
The garment industry, I tell you two things. My father was a route salesman, and he used to go down to the garment center at least once or twice a month to get product to sell on his route. So as a kid, I would go with him, and that was just an interesting and fascinating part of New York.
Yeah, it was. I mean, a lot of gamblers in the garment industry. But, my father, the big excursion, the weekly excursion, we didn't go on vacations, but it was every Saturday. He'd say, Robert, Michael, let's get ready to go to the open air synagogue. And before, I thought it was a synagogue. At first, I thought we were going to a synagogue. We were Jewish, but we never went to a synagogue. It was always piled into this Cadillac with the windows rolled up, with an air conditioner that didn't work, and Marty the Leprechaun smoking a cigarette, and me and my brother in between in the back, with Brucey the Brain Braverman, Al the Wilner Nose, Nose Wilner, and just crammed doing
Is this where you developed your penchant for nicknames?
Oh yeah, no. Everyone had a nickname. I mean, even back then, nobody was called by their name.
Talk about your brother Robert, please.
So, Robert passed away about 9 years ago, and he had special needs. He was a year and a half, like 14 months younger than me. Always loved the races too, but always wanted to see the Wizard lose. Now, not because he wanted me to lose, but because he was a big fan of the Centaur, and he wanted to prove to my father.
No, you got to tell him who the Centaur is.
Well, the Centaur was this other handicapper who I worked for before I became the Wizard, and he had a sheet that he gave. He was great. He gave one-line comments. I worked for him. I handled his phone service. But my brother would buy the Centaur. He wanted no part of the Wizard, right? And he wanted to, every time he cashed, he just loved to shove it in my face, right? And showed him, and my father started believing in the Centaur, right? I wasn't quite the Wizard yet. I was kind of just doing my own thing at the track. So the Centaur became like my father's secret handicapper through my brother. And, my brother worked the newsstands on 72nd Street. He cornered the market. It would be like 10 below zero, and he'd be in a T-shirt full of ink from the time. He put all the times together, and he'd have his bag of Merritt Farm fried chicken. We went to boarding school when my father and mother divorced, and we started a food scam there. We made a lot of money that helped us with our bankroll when they actually threw us out of the boarding school for taking all the rich kids' money. But we had a bankroll. He liked to play. I liked to play. And, boy, do I miss him.
I'm sure. You talk about Centaur. Talk about folks who you would consider either mentors in the game or friends who you respect and help you be who you are.
Well, from the sheets back in the day, you couldn't. It was like printing money. Mm-hmm. Like there was
That's Ragozin.
Not Ragozin.
Oh.
Lawton.
Oh, okay. Those sheets.
Lawton.
Right.
Lawton, Connie the Beard.
Right.
New York Handicapper. Yeah. Centaur.
Okay.
So the same guy distributed all those sheets, and this guy Vinny Abate out of Flushing. Mm-hmm. Okay. It was printed out of like a Gestetner machine above a porn place on 42nd Street, at the top floor, right? And it was printing money. You printed hundreds and hundreds of sheets. It's when OTB first started, right. And I didn't start the Wizard back then.
They started in the 70s.
They started in the 70s. I mean, there's stories of the money, the cash that went through the newsstands, sure. Right? And I came in at the back end of that when they all made a ton. And I just remember visiting this place, and I'd have to go through this porn store, up the stairs to the printing press of these sheets. And at the end of the day, like the next day when the returns came, they were just dumped out the window into a what do you call
dumpster?
A dumpster. Hundreds and hundreds of sheets printed and sold. It was right at the beginning of OTB when you set it up. Every OTB was next to a newsstand.
Right.
And every newsstand had these sheets.
Sure.
This had nothing to do with, Ragozin and Jerry Brown.
No, I got you.
This was just
You're
sheets.
talking about the sheets.
The sheets. Yeah. So I came in at the tail end of that, and it was hard to crack that market, but I got to know the Centaur, like I said. The other guys wanted no part of me. I was like the, they didn't want, they were territorial, so to speak.
That's kind of nice.
Right. But, I came in at the tail end, and I was going to the track. Before I was the Wizard, I was, even later on at, 18, 19, 20, and that's where I met these people that are, great handicappers.
Okay. So here's when did you know and fully accept that you were a gambler? Flat out gambler. I chime in, I wager, I bet horses, but I'm not a gambler.
I knew it when my father, for every race, I was about 6 or 7 years old, he'd have me fetch a bouillon, a beef bouillon, at the track, every race. Well, he gave me $2, but the bouillon was $1.25. He let me pocket the 75 cents. So I accumulated enough money during that day, because it's every race he wanted a bouillon, even if he didn't finish it. So I was like 7 or 8. I already collected like $6 by midday. And I would tug on some guy, find some prey, to tug on his shirt and say, "Mister, would you please bet me $2 on this horse?" So I was betting at 5 or 6 years old. Then I needed, when I was like 9 or 10, I didn't have money, right? My father used to hide money underneath his mattress. And every once in a while, when he wasn't home, I'd lift the mattress up
and look at the money.
No, take some money.
Oh, okay.
No, I would take a 5 or 10, thinking he wouldn't
never know it.
He'd never know it, because it was stacks of money. So you can't operate without a bankroll, and I understood that at a very young age. So I have to come up with ways to build the bankroll.
Okay.
And so, but I needed a bookie to place the bet. And I had one in the next building next to me, Willie the Doorman.
Willie the Doorman.
Willie the Doorman was my bookie. And he would have me fetch the National Armstrong, because that was his betting tool.
Yep.
And by fetching the Armstrong, you could see all the tracks that were in play that day. And Kenny Kling. You had
Well, people think Nick Kling is his son.
Right, Kenny Kling, you had to solve the puzzle.
Yeah.
It was like a puzzle, and it would be a horse.
Right.
And Willie had to solve the puzzle, right?
I
and I would
that.
laugh at that. And even at 9 years old, I knew it was bullshit. So Willie would book my bets, even at a young age. So then I had to devise ways and scams to build a bankroll. So you remember the UNICEF orange boxes?
Yeah.
I'd get 2 boxes.
Oh, please.
One for UNICEF.
And one for you.
And one for me. That was one of the ways I waited for that. It was around Halloween.
Yes. You are not alone. As a matter of fact, I think half the human male race would say on Halloween they were scamming the world for you.
I mean, if I could sell the candy, I would. I'd try to sell candy.
Okay. All right.
And I had more scams than that.
Yeah, okay. All right. I want to go on. I want to go on to another. So, right, you have all these interactions at track, and now you're gonna have your own sheet. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about the day you decided to share with Noreen that this is what you wanted to do. Now, Noreen is his wife, who was with him when at that seminar where we met. But I'm trying to figure this. Just the karma or the moment when you say, "Hi, honey, this is what I'm going to do with our lives," and I mean, I think that's an interest. Talk about that moment.
Well, I was in the restaurant business,
right,
and me and my grandfather hated each other, right? So he was well connected, really well connected. And all I wanted to know for all the years I worked for him, because his best friend was Jake LaMotta.
Okay.
And I wanted to know if Jake LaMotta threw the fight against Sugar Ray Robinson. That's all I ever wanted my grandfather to tell me. So, we hate each other. Like we'd fight all the time. So he's dying. He's on his deathbed. And I'm still at the restaurant. And we line up one by one to say our goodbyes. he's dead. He's basically dead on the bed. I finally get the opportunity to go into the room to say my goodbyes. And I sit down in a chair right next to him. And he's really like almost dead. I said, Grandpa, could you tell me right now if Sugar Ray Robinson, if Jake LaMotta threw the fight against LaMotta, and he opens one eye and he goes, fuck you.
Oh.
And he goes, you're fired. That was it. He dies and I leave. So now what do I do with my life? I decide my passion was horse racing. I like to write. I think I could pick winners. And I came up with the name The Wizard. Had a great graphic artist design The Wizard.
Yep.
And it was the reason I named it The Wizard is because I used to watch The Wizard of Oz with my daughter from when she was like born, right?
Yeah.
So she's like 1 year old. I'm watching Wizard of Oz and I'm saying, I like the wizard. He's behind the curtain.
Yeah,
He's controlling everything from behind the curtain. And I said to Noreen, I want to start a tip sheet. I got to know the Centaur, got a job with the Centaur, created the sheet. She printed the sheet. We got a Gestetner machine.
Yeah.
We'd go out at 4 o'clock in the morning to the newsstands around New York, maybe 6 or 7 newsstands with my neighbor who smelled like dog. Like it was horrible. We go, we drop it off, and here I am running Pier 52.
Right.
And now I'm collecting change, like hardly anything, for like 3 months, 4 months.
Right.
I tell my father, no one's buying my sheet. I tell Noreen, this is ridiculous. I can't do this. I just had a child.
Yeah.
I gave her 6 months that I would do this. Right. That's it. So my father felt. So all of a sudden I start, instead of like counting coins, I'm getting dollar bills. Like people are buying my sheet. Well, it turns out my father felt so bad for me. He sent friends around from the garment industry to buy my sheet because no one was buying it. And then it was at the end. It was 6 months into it. It was time to give it up. And I needed to find that one horse to make a score and to put it on the sheet. And I saw a horse named Tough Spot, trained by Nicholas Fiore. He had one horse, Tough Spot. And 2 years ago, I remember cashing in on him, switching to Antonio Grael.
Right.
Well, to make a long story short, I put a pick six together with my friend Joe DiFilippo. We single him. He's 50 to 1.
And it's on the sheet, right?
It's on the sheet. Best bet of the day. And, back then, the beautiful tabloid form.
Right.
Not like the garbage they have now, right? Remember, I couldn't wait to get that form.
That's right.
They used to have a comment next to the morning line. And this was the first time I ever saw the comment for Tough Spot said, you got to be kidding.
Hermes buried him.
Right. So he's 50 to 1 on the morning line. My friend, I need $192 to construct this pick six, singling him. And my friend Joe said, you got to be on drugs, Wizard. This horse is going to be up the track. I said, if he goes back to that race 2 years ago, that's off the page.
I'm telling you, you sound like my uncle now.
Okay.
Because it would come around. It came around.
The
There you
same
go.
distance, everything.
There you
right?
go.
So we win the third, we win the fourth, Tough Spots in the fifth. He's 38 to 1. Break it from an outside post with Grael going 2 turns.
Gee, you remember this, huh?
I remember. He duels for the lead. At the top of the stretch, he starts dropping back. He's like third now. I just put my binoculars down and said, Joe, my career's over in the game. I start walking out. Joe says, Wiz, come back. He's going to the right-handed whip. Okay, so I don't know what he was doing, but he was whipping the horse with his right hand. There's a photo finish. He comes back with the favorite. And from where I'm standing, I can't tell if he won the race. All I do is I look up to the gods. And I said, God, just give me one. They put him up. And then there's an inquiry against him. Now I'm like, you got to be kidding. Like, I see my life in front of me. I see.
We were having this conversation yesterday when they put the inquiry. This is deja vu all over again.
But I wasn't alive yesterday for the same kind of money.
Yeah, of course.
They leave him up. Do you know how much I have on his? He pays $70-something.
Nothing.
Zero.
Yeah, of course.
I have to win the next 3 legs. I win the 6th. I win the 7th. We're alive with 2 horses in the 8th.
You bought the race, right?
So I say to Joe, find out how many tickets are alive. One other guy in Monticello had a ticket. He happened to have the Wizard sheet sent to him. And he bet all the top horses. It was basically, I hit basically almost a cold pick 6, right? If one of the 2 horses win. So we know one other person has it, but back then the pick 6 was huge.
Yeah.
It would be like $200,000 with a 1-day carryover.
Yeah.
So anyway, we win the pick 6, but before we hit the pick 6, we borrowed $10,000 from Doc Herschel. Okay, we called him the Doc, Herschel Bird.
Yeah.
To bet against ourselves so we get something out of the pool. But I didn't make that bet. I was too nervous. Joe did.
Okay.
He put the combinations in. So the next day,
Then you hit it.
we hit it. We both split after we gave Doc back his money, and he cashed the ticket, so we had to account for taxes, right? We both split about $40,000 in cash. So I was wearing a sports jacket. Everybody in the track knew the Wizard was alive for his life, and after the race, they congratulated We hire a limousine, and the limousine drops me off to my house. Now, Noreen knows this is my final day. If I don't hit, I'm gone. I'm done. So she's in the room, and our dining room table was a coffin where they rest the coffin, right? That was the dining room table. I laid out the $40,000, all in hundreds. I didn't want to check, I wanted cash. I laid it out, and she comes into the kitchen, and she sees all this money, and she goes, takes it, what is this? I said, we did it. She goes, I don't believe you. You borrowed this money. You couldn't have done it.
Yeah, I can see Noreen doing that.
So now Harvey Pack had a show.
Yeah.
Was it WOR?
Yeah.
It was, right. It was the recap of the
Right.
show. So I go, let's listen to the show, and I'll show you how I won the race, how I did this. So she's holding the Wizard sheet, and Harvey Pack comes on, and he goes, you can't believe what happened today. This lunatic they call the Wizard had the audacity to single this horse, Tough Spot. And he's going through, so the whole card of the pick 6 sequence was about me and the pick 6. It gets to Tough Spot. He wins. He goes, this jerk had to single this horse.
That was Harvey being kind.
Right. He goes, he singled this horse, but you know how much he wins? 0, because he only played the pick 6. So let's see what happens. So he ends up, we win the pick 6. So I tell Noreen, now I'm only printing 10 sheets a day. No one's buying it. I go, Noreen, we're printing 300. So I print 300 sheets, and it sells out the next day, 1 hour before first post, because Harvey is building it up. This idiot does this, and he had the balls to do this, and what. So anyway, I'm in the clubhouse, and a guy calls me in, comes up to me, goes, Harvey wants to see you. I go, what does Harvey want? I go to his office, and we called him Daddy. Yeah. And I go, hey, Daddy, thanks for plugging me yesterday. He goes, sit down, Wizard. He goes, how many sheets you sell today? I said, 300. He goes, don't lie. I have a connection with the people. I'll know what you sold. I said, Daddy, 300. He goes, how much you make? So it was like $2, right? 300. He goes, what's your commission? So he goes, quarter for me, 25% for me. I could use a little bankroll.
There it goes.
So that was, those were the days. Paul Kornman, Brad Thomas, Herschel Bird, the Red Baron. I mean, those characters don't exist now.
Well, not in the context of simulcasting and the fact that people rarely don't congregate at the track like they used to. That's just the ultimate change of the game. Now, I just want to go, you're talking about the evolution of selection sheets, if you will, from the track. Then there was 800, 900 numbers.
Right.
Then now there's the inner. Just talk about the explosion of information, good or bad, or indifferent, that's out there today in internet land, social media land. There's 82 different people. Everybody's given picks everywhere.
Yeah, it makes my job as a handicapper even tougher.
Sure.
As a bettor, for all of us bettors, much tougher, especially now with the computer money in there. Right. There's a lot of talented handicappers. We're all looking at the same thing.
Right.
And, when numbers, my mentor was a guy named Red, who really was the father of the numbers before Rogozin. Okay, he was the guy behind Julie Fink and the Speed Boys that destroyed bookmakers around the country. Yeah. I learned from him, larceny. Like, he was a numbers guy that smelled out larceny. I've never been a numbers guy.
But you smell out.
I smell out larceny.
Yeah.
So I have to stay. That's why I'm an instinctual. My edge is everybody's looking at a lot of things. I'm looking at a few things. But I'm looking for angles that come together that stay the test of time. Now, Heiss is going to put the juicers out of business. There'll always be some that pop up,
of course,
but it's going to be a level playing field, probably within the next 5 to 10 years, or maybe less. But I needed the juicers. Like, the juicers helped me, not because it was bad. It's not.
Really what you're explaining, what you've explained to me, if you're in the job of picking winners, okay, that's your job, and certain guys are winning, to say, I'm not going to pick them because I don't like the way they're winning, is shooting yourself in the foot, right?
I'm not the judge and jury,
that's right.
Okay?
You're just a picker.
I'm a selector.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in a game where I have to endure every day. People are betting real money and hard-earned money on my picks. I need angles. I just need angles. I'm an angle guy. I'm not going to be anything different. So I have to adjust. So, we're going to avoid a lot of losers on horses that are being bet from trainers that aren't winning now.
Right.
Okay? They put the kibosh on some of these guys.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the fact.
Yeah.
So on the other side, we're staying away from those people. But we need those certain types of people. We have to adjust. Everybody's adjusting. But in order for me to stay at my level, I'm selling picks at $20, $30 a shot. You get a lot of free stuff from good handicappers. So for me to sell what I sell, I better be not only better than ever, I just better come up with some good horses and good strategies. And the betting window has been a product that is good.
Yeah. Well, the thing I want to say for you, as I've known you, I can look at myself in the mirror and say, I'm a successful guy. I spent 30 years teaching. I have a retirement. I have a daughter who owns a house. I have a wife. We're healthy. And it looks like we're okay going forward. I have always admired you because you're an independent contractor. You're an entrepreneur. You've put 3 kids through school. You've done a great job as a father and a family man and a husband, and you've done it doing what we've talked about here today in the context of everybody who thinks they can do it or wants to do it, taking a shot at you, if you will. You know what I mean?
Look, you're right. Look, I don't profess to be the best handicapper or the worst handicapper. I do my job. I paint a picture every racing day, right? That's my... And if you want to buy it, you buy it. If you don't, you don't. I'm betting my money, okay? But
yep, and he's betting his money.
But in any profession, I don't care what it is, if you've stood the test of time, and we've stood the test of 40 years of hard work and not bullshitting people, really just working hard, that's the mark of success. If you do that with integrity and you stay the test of time. So all these people who confess to be great handicappers and do what I did for 40. Tell me
40 years from now.
You know, send me a message up in heaven and let me know that you stood the 40 years test of time.
Absolutely.
Because basically, that's the true test. I don't see any other.
Absolutely. Well, we hope you've enjoyed these interviews. I've enjoyed talking to Michael, knowing Michael. I'm delighted that he continues to call me a friend. And there will be more Get Tied On. We're working out a schedule for the future. It's brought to you by WizardRacingSports.com. And Wizard, tell them one more time, it's football season.
Football season, I got a great handicapper in Doc Allen. He averaged the last 3 years he's been with me at Wizard Racing Sports. He's hit over 60% each of the years. We offer packages. I'm getting into the sports arena too, because I think there's a lot of charlatans out there. We post a ticket, $500 ticket on every game we give out, and like my sheets and my work and your work, we do it with integrity, and I'm trying to do the same thing with sports. But we'll be right back for the final, just a quick segment on the Gallop Out, some final thoughts on the meet.
Okay. Welcome back to Get Tied On. It's time for the Gallop Out, and with some final thoughts on this meeting. What are you feeling?
Other than the weather, that's nature. We can't do anything about that. But I feel that the stewards have done a very poor job this meet, and there've been too many inconsistencies.
Right.
Just this past week, we're sitting together. The same day, 2 horses run off. The first one ran off at least 5 furlongs, was fractious, actually ran a race for 5 furlongs with another horse that the outrider
couldn't pull him up.
Right. Then comes back, rears, almost goes over the rail, goes in the gate, rears again, backed out, allowed to run, got beat 30 lengths. Okay, that was the second choice in the wagering. They allowed the horse to run. Why? Don't ask me. A few races later, another horse who's the favorite runs off for 3 furlongs, comes back, doesn't rear. They load the horse in the gate. They scratch the horse.
Right, immediately.
Immediately scratch the horse. And I just don't understand. That's the epitome of inconsistency.
It's the epitome of inconsistency absent any explanation.
Right.
That's the problem. There is little, if any, transparency as to why a decision is made. And the longer that lasts, the worse it's going to be for this game.
Right. The pick 5 issue earlier in the meet was horrible. Their decision making there. My friend putting in a claim, and because he didn't put IRE on it, but he spelt the name correctly. The condition book. A lot of issues this meet that go beyond the weather. And I think after this meet, I give, and I'm being kind, a D. C minus D grade. If I'm a teacher and I'm trying to grade this paper, and you're a teacher, you were a teacher, what would be your grade overall for this meet? The way they handled it.
I don't think you could give it a C. I don't think you could give it a C. So I would agree with you on the D, because the weather is out of their control, but everything else is within their control as far as I can see it. There is no what level of concern exists for stewards who don't have to provide an explanation, even if, they started something on the website, then they didn't do it. There's an inconsistency there. It's Saratoga, and we're going to put up with an awful lot because we love Saratoga. And I think the fact that the industry doesn't think gamblers will go away. I don't think they respect the bettor enough, the entire industry. So for this meet, you know, D plus, maybe C minus at the best overall.
Yeah, I mean, I've been coming up here a lot of years, and I found, you know, the two debts in front of us,
Right.
New York Thunder and Maple Leaf Mel, were really hard to bear. A lot of, you know, my friend his horse dies on the turf. You know, people leaving, people crying. You just don't want to see that at a racetrack. So, you know, there's a lot of
Right.
solemn moments here.
Right.
You know, that, you know, obviously injuries happen. You don't know what the real problem, what happened, but I thought the way they handled the track for New York Thunder, sealing it after the rain came, and I didn't get that. I just didn't get the inconsistency of several DQs or non-DQs.
Yeah.
I think at the end of this meet, there's like 9 days off or something. I think the first thing Naira needs to do is get everyone together, the New York State, whatever, and come up with a better game plan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, time to sign off for this.
It was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
And I hope the viewers,
Yep.
you know,
Hold
found
on.
this show enjoyable, and
Yep.
we did the best we can with. It was our first merry-go-round and it was our first
And it's
rodeo,
gonna
and it was good.
But you'll be posting to this. It's the Wizard Thoroughbred Racing channel. You'll be posting the interviews that we have in the can. You'll be introducing those. You know, we'll probably be doing something
Breeders' Cup,
remote.
probably.
We'll be doing a Breeders' Cup thing. We'll keep you all posted about that.
And I'm going to. It looks like I'm going to go to Keeneland and arrange an interview or
There
two,
you
and
go.
maybe put a video cam in your house.
There
and
we
have
go.
Renee endure another, you know, on and off few months of you doing this, but
right.
it's all in fun.
Okay, so this is Get Tied On. It's on the Wizards Thoroughbred Racing channel, brought to you by WizardsRacingSports.com.